We are live. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today I have a very special guest, a Palestinian native and a very strong voice that has been reporting the truth about the current Gaza genocide, unfortunately, as it is happening. Brother Mahmood, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brother.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, I'm so glad to have you on. And like I said to you before we joined, this is such an important topic, and I'm so happy that someone as yourself is, constantly giving updates and constantly making sure that you get the message out there. It's so important because I don't think a lot of people know the ins and outs of things. They just see what they see either on mainstream media or through Instagram, but you actually do need to look into it. It's so... Yeah, please go.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You said it outright. And part of the duty and our work is the fact that you have so much misinformation going on. And with the level of misinformation, you need to have a counter. Push for it, really, and push for the actual truth, because what's being promoted out there on mainstream media is the pseudo narrative, is the propaganda that's unsubstantiated, based on false facts and absolute lies, as was evident since the beginning of this genocide. And obviously they do that and they try and intimidate people. This is what's important to mention, by the way. They try and intimidate people to not talk about it, and label the Palestinians, label the Palestinian resistance, and cover up for the crimes that the Zionists commit in Gaza and all across of Palestine, decontextualize everything that's happened. This is where it's a duty to keep working, and it's so important to keep pushing and keep working and keep revealing the truth as to what's happening, because people are suffering, people are going through a genocide. And the priority we have is to stop this genocide. And one of the ways to stop the genocide is at least establish the facts that are actually happening on the ground, so we can inform the people as to what's happening, and they can make informed decisions.
Yeah, and it's also an insult, I think, when people, support the other side because they don't have the right information, because it's an insult to the people that are going through so much difficulty just now. It's really sad. We've lost nearly 40,000 of our brothers and sisters in Palestine in just the last 8 months. There's probably a lot more under the rubble that we don't know about. Do you still have friends or relatives in Palestine? Are you hearing from them directly about what's going on there?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a Palestinian who was born in Israel. So in Israel, there's 2 million Palestinians, 2.2 million Palestinians. I was born in a city called Haifa. This city witnessed an ethnic cleansing campaign in 1948, where it had 80,000 Palestinians, Muslims and Christian. 75,000 of them were expelled during the ethnic cleansing campaign, during the Nakba, what we call the Nakba, or the catastrophe. Some people, by the way, don't use the term catastrophe because it hints to a natural disaster, where what Israel did was a man-made deliberate campaign, and therefore they call it the ethnic cleansing. But I agree with both terms. My great-grandfathers were part of that 5,000 community that remained in their land. And obviously, I still have family members there. I still have friends there. And the situation that they're going through is tough, is very tough. I mean, regardless of the fact that they're not facing the direct blunt of the current genocide that's going on, obviously, you have a bit of tensions in the north, quite significant the closer you go to Lebanon. Haifa, my native city, it hasn't been significantly hit, targeted attacks on certain locations, really. But the general vibe is very bad. And obviously, it's a very awkward position to be born in. You're born in your land, the land of your ancestors that was occupied and is facing injustice. It's not like you've had an occupation similar to other occupations where things started to normalize after a while. Now, mind you, there's some sort of normality in certain elements. However, the core of the state is a racist, supremacist state. It's a country that was established on racism, supremacy, and violence and terror. And you feel that wherever you go. You feel that with the homes that were evacuated and are still standing there, homes from 1948 where people were expelled from and they weren't allowed to return to. And obviously the community there, the Palestinian community, they face draconian laws since the beginning of the genocide. Israel implemented emergency measures, and they wanted to shut down every critical voice when it comes to the Palestinian community inside of Israel, because we're very vocal, protest a lot, support the Palestinian people's rights. And Israel increasingly got more and more suppressive when it comes to this, to a level where they ban raising the Palestinian flag. Now people started to use watermelons and what have you as a symbol. And that caused the Palestinian community to suffer and sympathize in silence, the Palestinian community inside of Israel, because people were facing severe repercussions for basic things, like, for example, liking a post, sometimes a Quranic verse, sometimes a show of sympathy, a criticism of Israel's genocide in Gaza. People were suffered, they went to prison, some of them suffered financially, all sorts of punishment, which goes against, by the way, the propaganda and the pseudo narrative, again, that some mainstream media pushes, that, oh, Israel has Arab citizens and they live equally. That is not true whatsoever. What is arguable is the level of apartheid, obviously. So every non-Zionist Jew in Israel is a Class B citizen, and they live under levels of apartheid. So the Palestinians in Israel are the most privileged in that sense, living under apartheid again, such a wonderful privilege. And then you have the people in the West Bank facing it day by day, and Gaza is the most catastrophic interpretation. It's the most violent and oppressed part. And this is why Israel faces the harshest resistance from Gaza. The more oppressive the government is, the more resistance you face. And that's why we always contextualize, even from the beginning, after the 7th of October attack, when many people rushed to condemn everything that was happening without contextualizing anything or reading through it or doubting what the mainstream is telling us, which was later very clear and evident based on evidence coming out from Israel that I always talk about, by the way, whether when it comes to Israel's complicity in massacring Israelis on the 7th of October, covering up and killing their own people. In Gaza, they killed 100 Israelis in Gaza. They massacred the majority of the Israelis on the 7th of October in the Nova Festival in Ra'im, Nir Oz, and Be'eri, with many witness statements as well. So it's obviously a tough situation there. But what we're working towards is obviously a better future. Firstly, there are priorities. Number one, ending the genocide. And then looking for a better future, working for equality. And all of this matter can be simply solved with equal rights. Every human being deserves equal rights from their country, regardless of their race, faith, or background. And that's not something that we saw from the Israeli government. They're constantly pushing for more propaganda, more discrimination, and more violence.
Oh,
yes, I can see you. Yeah,
I lost you for a second.
I continue talking while you froze because this happened. It happened with my channel as well.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. Yes, continue. I was. You were saying.
Yeah, I made them a main point. Really, is to obviously work towards equality to finally end this conflict once and for all.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that you said, like, sort of stood out for me is that a lot of the people were born into this, and some people were born into this and they lived through this. Some people have even died through this, and it's really sad because they don't know any other life apart from what's going on over there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them, and those that have been lost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them Jannah. I want to sort of ask, despite the incessant Zionist propaganda of blaming Hamas in order for the IDF to commit war crimes and target hospitals and schools and mosques, they still hide the facts from the world, that the IDF has eliminated 40 times more people than the number that was given for October 7th. Daily attacks for over, 8 months now. And recently we've noticed ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan has applied for arrest warrants to be issued for Netanyahu and his defence minister. What are your thoughts on the ICC application for arrest warrants for Netanyahu and co? Do you think that it's going to make a difference, or do you think it's just all words and no action?
I think the ICC, firstly, they made an application, a request to have arrest warrants. So the arrest warrants haven't officially been issued, but I think they're flawed. They're flawed because they included the Palestinian resistance leaders. And they're flawed purely because, firstly, it's very late. Secondly, they don't include all of the Israeli war criminals. Thirdly, they include the resistance leaders. What's the flaw in this? Number one, as an ICC prosecutor, Khan should have known better when it comes to international law. Under international law, the Palestinian people under occupation, have a right within international law to defend themselves, including through armed resistance. That's number one. Did he know that? If he knew that, then clearly he's not doing his job properly. If he did not know that, that's even worse, which means the man doesn't know. He's ignorant, right? Now, I know he's received threats, but still, trying to make it out as if the victim and the mass genocidal criminal culprit are the same is purely flawed. I think they should completely cancel this arrest warrant request for the Palestinian resistance and include everyone else in Israel. Another problem with the ICC, by the way, and mind you, every progress that goes against these war criminals is good. However, another problem with the ICC and with the international law is the fact that we as Palestinians know very well that what is deemed as international institutions and international law does not protect you. You have UN resolutions from 1948 calling for a Palestinian state, calling for the rights of the Palestinian refugees to return. In the 80s, the UN had resolutions hailing and supporting the Palestinian Intifada uprising and supporting the armed struggle of the Palestinian people and condemning any countries that doesn't support it. The UN had so many resolutions that the US vetoed that were in favor of the Palestinians. Why is that? It's because we live in a unipolar world, really. And when you talk about the Security Council, it's dictated by a couple of states that don't really represent their people in many cases, let alone people of other nations. And Western powers have proven that they support this extremism, this violence, and this terrorism that's coming from this genocidal state, because they conducted similar genocides not long ago. I mean, Iraq is not far away, a million. Afghanistan is not far away. What the US has done is in Vietnam, in Latin American countries, supporting terrorist movements, genocidal drug cartels, coups everywhere they don't like it. And, they call it in the name of democracy whenever it's suitable for them, although it's very arguable whether or not we live in genuine democracies. Yes. When it comes to some of the Western countries. Obviously, there's elements of democracies, elements of freedom of speech, of individual liberty. However, when it comes to the foreign policy of these countries, it becomes very evident that the support for democracy, the support for human rights, the support for women's rights is very selective, and whenever it's convenient. As a matter of fact, they will go against democracy in many cases. When you talk about Gaza, that was a democratically elected movement. What do they do after Hamas is elected? A blockade. Right? Similarly with other nations as well, in Africa, in many countries, whenever democracy doesn't suit them, they go against it. So I think the ICC thing, is flawed. It's good in the sense of Israel. It's negative in the sense of the Palestinian resistance. And what's more important is to have a consistent law that applies on everyone and is able to be enforced. And you saw the prosecutor himself when he had an interview. He said he received a call from one of the leaders who told him the ICC is for African nations and thugs like Putin. Look at the racist sentiment stemming from that. And that's a problem. That's a problem, but that problem is slowly but surely changing. And it's changing with the shift of power across the world. Unfortunately, we wish that, we as human beings could reach solutions diplomatically through communication. But these people in power, these people supporting Israel, they prove time after time that the only language they understand is force. They push for violence. And whenever they face resistance, they start to label it. When they are the great grandmother of terrorism and genocide across the world, which has been evident since a previous century, really, at least.
I think with this, I've always known about what's happening, with Iraq and Afghanistan. You've always been aware that we are less than, or seen as less than, in the world. And I think, with everything going on, but I think this time, with everything that's happening in Palestine, the way that the world has responded, I think for the first time I've really seen that, there's nowhere for us to be protected. Alhamdulillah, I live in a country where I am protected, so to speak. But actually, when you talk about the UN, you talk about international law, none of that means anything. It's all just things put in place to keep people happy, to keep people thinking that they're safe. But actually, it's just rubbish. It's like I said, it's all words and action. From what's happened recently, we've seen when they first attacked Gaza after October 7th, they then attacked al-Shafi, then Khan Yunis, and now Rafah. All places are war crimes that they're committing, one after the other. And I'm sure Rafah is not the last place that they will attack. They will continue to go on. And they just tell people in Palestine to go from one place to another and then just keep attacking and airstriking them anyway. It's so cruel and inhumane. And it's terrorism, it's extremism. We see that. How if we don't see that, there's something wrong with you. And the ICJ, just ordered Israel to stop these onslaughts in Rafah. And again, arrogant Zionists have responded with more targeted strikes. And I don't know what will happen to get them to see if anything will actually happen to them. I am actually surprised recently. I'm sure you'll know that France, Germany, and Norway support the arrest warrant decision, and the warrants have been issued, and they will arrest Netanyahu if he sets foot in those nations. It would effectively ban him from around 124 countries if the warrants are issued. Norway, Ireland, and Spain recognise the state of Palestine. How significant is that recognition?
I'll comment on one thing you mentioned previously about us being protected. This is why there's a global outroar from people all across the world. Why is that? And that's something that I spoke about from the beginning. If you justify or are silence about the crimes that Israel is protecting, then you're legitimizing them, you're legitimizing them on you. And that's what people realize. So hold on a second. If my government here in the US or in Britain or in another country is legitimizing and supporting that to these people, then one day this legitimization can be on myself. Why? Because I'm legitimizing the act. Okay, and that's why people feel that they're unprotected, because the governments that are supporting this genocidal country are not worried about their own citizens, by the way. These people will sell their own troops as cannon fodder for wars to gain money and power. Yeah. Britain didn't say a thing or a condemnation when 3 volunteers who are British were targeted deliberately by Israel unknowingly, despite the fact that they had communication with the Israeli army. Moving on to the next point. Any country that recognizes Palestine is good. Although it's symbolic, it might not have many interpretations and translations on the ground. It's good. It's very important. Israel is worried about it. And the fact that these war criminals know that I cannot set foot in this country because I'm a war criminal, and I'm being accused in the ICC is very good, and it will create a momentum. This is one of the positive things about the ICC and the ICJ. Now, when I spoke about the ICJ, particularly with the genocide case that South Africa took Israel to the ICJ about, one thing I mentioned at the time is that it will not stop the genocide.
Yeah.
So we don't have faith in it for stopping the genocide. What will happen is some countries who have some sort of respect for the international court, they will take a step back and try and degrade their relations with Israel. And this started to have a domino effect. Start off with Japan and the Netherlands banning the sale of certain parts for F-35s and things to do with the Israeli military. It continued with the Canada banning arms exports to Israel, which was one of their top 10, by the way, exporters. They stopped that as well. And then you had a momentum of other countries too, and you have this recognition of a Palestinian state from obviously some countries already consider Palestine a state from a long time ago in Europe, like Sweden, Iceland, and now you have these countries. You'll create a domino effect where it's legit, it's good to support a Palestinian state. As a matter of fact, and I spoke about the Deputy Prime Minister of Spain, she said from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Which obviously no one should have a problem with that. But how Israel translates it is they don't want us to be there as a country. Yet she went on and said that. They're pushing it more, right? Which led to Israeli repercussions and punishment measures when it comes to Spain and particularly its dealings with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So all of these things are good and they're welcome. However, what I would add is that the momentum of the people, number one, because what we all need to understand is that this is a people-led movement. People from all walks of life seeing the injustice, speaking out against it, protesting, being vocal, social media, online, in the streets, encampments. That's what's making the change. If people were quiet, there wouldn't have been any request for their governments to make a shift or a change. And what people need to understand is that's you doing that. Everyone sitting, watching, commenting, sharing knowledge, going in and acting and participating to reveal the truth about the suffering of the Palestinian people and the genocide that's going on, to end it, because you realize that your country is complicit when it comes to this. So that should continue. This is what I always emphasize on, that this move should continue. People should be more vocal so that we could continue to push for a better future for everyone. But mainly and primarily the people who are suffering most now and who we have our eyes set on and who we have their pain directing us, who are the people of Gaza.
Yeah. I mean, I was just at we call it a dua here. It was somebody's getting married close to us, and we done a dua for the couple that were getting married, and included in the dua was for Palestine. And it was nice, you know, there's
Alhamdulillah.
full of women and children, and that was included in it, and it made me feel like, you know, we do have a sense of togetherness. And everywhere I go, my girls, I take them to a class every Monday. They go to an Islamic class every Monday. And again, at the end, when they sit and do a dua, they always do a dua for Palestine. And it encourages the children to know, you know, it's not just you in this world. There are people outside of you. And like I said, it's so important. But it's also important for non-Muslims, because if this was happening to a country where there was non-Muslims, I would still stand up. I would still talk about it.
Absolutely.
It's not just because they're Muslims, people think, oh, that's why everybody's doing an uproar. No, it's just
absolutely wrong. Yeah, and because there's Palestinian Christians too.
Yeah.
There were Palestinian Jews. Zionism came and shifted the narrative. It was a multicultural society, and obviously each person has their own faith, and obviously we're free to choose our faith, alhamdulillah. And you had this movement creating all of these frictions. So absolutely, it's not just about people being Muslims. You know, Islam teaches us, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. The verse says, we have dignified the sons of Adam, all of humanity. Every human being is dignified. How can I justify that against another fellow human being who is innocent? who is a non-combatant, who is not fighting me, who is not oppressing me, right? And people are realizing that, and it's a great sense of togetherness, which really shows that despite our differences, our difference in faiths and beliefs and backgrounds and races, that we can have a common language, and this common language is what's necessary when we talk about politics and running countries. You know, people having equal rights, that they deserve the same rights to live as equal and dignified human beings.
Yeah, it's humanity. It's our human nature that is coming out during this. But I know, without freedom, recognition of Palestine is just a baby step. Even though 143 countries, I think it is now, recognize the state of Palestine, but we still need the oppression, we still need the genocide to stop, along with the recognition. I know around 10 ceasefire deals have been rejected by Israel since October 8th, and they continue with their hostage release narrative. And any ceasefire proposal they have received that has been included with the release of hostages, they still rejected it. So it's very clear what they want to do. They just, like we said, they just want to do the genocide. They want to wipe out Gaza. They want to take over the land. What is your opinion on the recent viral images of captured female IDF soldiers who Israel is painting as innocent victims, while at the same time justifying imprisoned Palestinian kids by labeling them, potential Hamas members?
Well, number one, Israel boasts about the fact that it's a military society. Number one. This is number one. Yeah. Number two, the Israeli Minister of National Security is pushing to arm every single Israeli. Okay? So much of the Israeli society is armed anyway. Most Israelis are reservists. They'll receive order number 8 and then go to the army. So that's the Israeli society in general. Let's establish that fact. Secondly, on the 7th of October, Hamas and the Palestinian resistance conducted a military operation and humiliated Israel by taking down a whole division, which is called the Gaza division. They later on went to other parts in modern-day Israel, that was Palestine, areas that these people were expelled from and are not allowed to go back to, although they were born there. By the way, it's important to note, these are the people who carried out these attacks and people who witnessed massacres when they were young and expelled from their homes and witnessed brutality. The most extreme brutality from Israel, by the way, in Gaza. What Gaza is witnessing now is worse than in terms of numbers of casualties and suffering, than the Nakba itself of 1948. People need to understand that very well. In the past, Israel has killed more children during this genocide than all of the global wars combined in the past 4 years. People need to understand that very well. This is the country that we're talking about, okay? And the vast majority of their casualties are innocent civilians, and they target them deliberately. Okay. It's evident, and I speak about this consistently, that Israel massacred its own civilians when it comes to the 7th of October. If there were any civilians, and that's in question, by the way, that were targeted by the Palestinian resistance, even from the evidence we saw both from Israel and the Palestinian resistance, they would have deemed them a threat. Either someone running, someone running at them, or whatever it is, not complying with orders, and them considering the fact that Israelis mostly are an armed nation. An armed nation. Civilians hold weapons in Israel. People need to understand that. And with Israel's attempt, it's another pathetic attempt. It's a pathetic attempt from war criminals who committed the worst crimes, the worst acts, the worst genocidal acts, crimes against humanity, against children, against women. 15,000 children. I know. 70% of the casualties are women and children. Yeah. Can we comprehend that? To a level where some people are saying Hamas is the collateral damage in this war now. If any Hamas member is killed, that's just collateral damage by accident. We're targeting the people. And obviously the main aim is to expel them. This is another desperate attempt from Israel that it will not succeed in, by the way, because with their genocide and with this hate-filled campaign in Gaza, they opened the eyes of everyone. They opened the eyes of the people who used to support them. They opened the eyes of the people who were apathetic. that opened the eyes of the people who didn't care about Palestine or Israel. And everyone's seeing them for who they are. And we already saw your lies before. 50 beheaded babies. That was later debunked. Women raped, debunked, no actual proof, no evidence. And they're blaming the Palestinian resistance about such things. And they're the furthest people away from such acts, because the people, some of the witnesses from the 7th of October, Israeli Jews, who have been in contact with the Palestinian resistance on the 7th of October. One of them came out in the first early days of the war on one of the Israeli channels and said, I was surprised to see that these people, they reassured me firstly. They told me, I'm not here to hurt you. And we are Muslims, we believe in the Qur'an, and we're not here to target you. We're on a military campaign. We want to take prisoners so that we can swap them for our people. And even the prisoners who went there, they told them, you're guests here. We don't want you here. But your country is doing this to us, and this led us to this happening. Okay? Now, obviously, the mainstream media will focus on these people 24/7, and they wouldn't talk about the chopped bodies of children and women every single day, and in many days in the thousands a day, by this what I call the genocidal satanic death cult of Israel. It's another desperate attempt. They will fail. As a matter of fact, whether we reach a ceasefire or we don't reach a ceasefire, we are witnessing, in my opinion, the final days of what is called Israel as we knew it before. The ideology of violent neo-colonialist Zionism is ending. It's a cancer, it's a disease, and there is no way to cure it. The only way you cure it is by eliminating this disease. And then talking about a better future for every human, from every race, from every nationality, to have equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea, so we can have some prospect of a better and more peaceful future.
Inshallah. That would be that is a dream, I guess, to have that. It's like you said, it's good that not good that this has happened, but people have seen Israel for what they have been doing for 70, 80 years now. It's now finally in the eyes of everybody. Unfortunately, so many people have suffered, like you said, and I don't think that there should be any hostages or attacks. But the onus is on Israel to stop, as they are the aggressor. Like I said, these IDF girls are choosing to participate in armed warfare, but like you said, everybody is armed there. But then at the same time, you're going on TikTok and they're dancing and mocking deceased Palestinians. It's actually, there's mentally something wrong with a lot of these people. I genuinely think
Totally.
there's something in their
You're right.
or there's something in whatever, I don't know what it is, but there's a mental illness there. I actually saw footage of a female IDF soldier shooting an unarmed Palestinian man in the back as he was walking away. You've seen about the stones, the boy that was throwing the stones and he got shot to death. I mean, I've never seen this. The videos that have come out, I've never seen this in my life. This is the sort of stuff that you would see in films and movies. The fact that this is happening in real life to real people, real children, I really struggle. I don't know about your brother, but I really struggle to watch children that are doing the way they are.
This is how they are. We know it from day one. Really, we were born in this situation, and the thing that I keep telling people is that is Israel for you. The only difference is that they've been doing it on a low heat, slowly, but that's normal. Shooting children, shooting women for fun, having impunity, robbing people's houses, expelling people from their homes, demolishing their homes. They fill water wells with cement in the West Bank. Why? What's threatening you about people having water? They want to make the Palestinian lives as miserable as possible so that these people can leave the lands that they were born in for these squatters, not settlers, squatters who came in and stole their lands. And the people of Palestine, they're not going to give up. As a matter of fact, you try to commit an ethnic cleansing in Gaza. What's happening is there's an ethnic cleansing of Israel automatically. They're leaving the country. Millions are leaving Israel now and are out for good. And many people who were evacuated from their homes surrounding Gaza and northern Israel due to the strikes of the Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance, they're not going to come back. You're talking about a nation that most of them have passports. It's both a strategic thing, right, and a psychological thing. A psychological thing because they know that this is temporary. It's as if you're on a high whilst being racist and being enabled. That's why I also say the people who enable them are worse than them. If you're talking about a psychopathic individual who has the capacity to murder people, this is the example that I give. Sitting there in a room and you have a warden. America, the United States administration, is the warden. They gave them the keys. They allowed them out. They told them, here you have all the weapons in the world. Go and kill whoever you want. If Israel didn't have this support from the US, they wouldn't have committed this. If they didn't get the impunity and support from the British government, from the other countries who support the genocide, they wouldn't be as audacious with this genocide. But primarily the United States administration, because of the level of support that they get from them. And that is ending. That is ending because there is no way you can cover such a genocide, by the way. And one thing that people need to be aware of very, very well is that a very small, and that's not to say that it's always the majority is always right or the minority is always wrong. As a matter of fact, the minority can be right in many cases. However, when it comes to Israel now, with this genocide, a very small minority of the world supports this genocide. What mainstream media and politicians are trying to do is make it look like they still have some sort of support. Whereas what's really happening is they're getting the support of a small clique in power, holding key positions, trying to legitimize what they're doing. Whereas really and truly, they do not have the support of over 99% of the population on Earth, because what they're doing goes against every human principle. You spoke about horror movie. We haven't seen this in any horror movie. You haven't seen in any horror movie the scenes from Al-Ma'madan hospital with the hospital staff giving a press conference surrounded by bodies. You haven't seen in any horror movie a country bombing a truck that has 73 refugees, half of which are children, bombing them with a 1-ton bomb or half a ton bomb and blowing them to smithereens. Going and targeting innocent people, raping women, murdering children, hospitals, water wells, wheat factories, every single lifeline. You're talking about the most horrific scenes in history, one of the worst massacres in history, in open air. And the people who support it or try to legitimize it or make it seem like there's still some sort of support for this country, they speak in the name of the international community. They speak in the name of the international community, disregarding the fact that they're not even representing their own populations, and they're merely a small genocide clique in a couple of Western countries. And that's it.
Yeah, you do see the power shifting a lot. You even see people that at the beginning were very much for Israel, and now slowly you see them questioning differently when they have, people have guests on or whatever, like that, shows that I've been watching, and you see that the questions are now slightly different, because you cannot justify this anymore. You can't say the same things that you've been saying, because some of it is, you just come out is not even true. Like you said, with what happened on October 7th, it's very clear, and it's and I actually never thought that I would see this in my lifetime. I always thought, what's happened in the past with Iraq, with, World War II, all that sort of thing. You think, okay, this cannot happen again. And actually, this is probably the worst, like you said, in history that will ever happen. Our grandchildren, great-grandchildren will study this like we have studied in the past. And unfortunately, we've lived through this and we've seen it. we've seen that very few Muslim nations have actually stepped in to help Palestine. Yemen did. Pakistan are rumoured to have helped. Iran also, obviously. Though people have said that, they may have ulterior motives, and Kuwait has been vocal as well. How do you feel about Muslim nations not helping Palestine, especially, like we said, with the US and the UK being so heavily involved with arming Israel?
It shows them that they have nothing to do with Islam as a religion in power, at least those in power. What kind of Islam? In the era of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, the first caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab was famously quoted saying, لو ماتت شاة على نهر الفرات ضائعة لظننت أن الله سائلني عنها. If a sheep died being lost on the Nile, on the Euphrates, I would assume that Allah would ask me about this sheep. A sheep being lost on the Euphrates River, that's the sense of justice in Islam. The famous woman who called Wa Mu'tasima, calling for Al-Mu'tasim, the leader at the time. Later, he sent an army of people because one woman called him. Yet you have women and children and innocent men and people being slaughtered to death, and you're sitting there doing nothing. The only people who participated with force visibly, so that we are fair for everyone, were Lebanon, the Lebanese resistance, Yemeni resistance, Iraqi resistance, and Iran supporting them. These were the people who supported. You might argue about other countries, their level of involvement. They might have done things under the radar. Egypt could be such a scenario. By the way, what Egypt did in terms of not bowing down to the pressure to ethnically cleanse and open the borders prevented Israel from actually committing the ethnic cleansing, and people should remember that. And when we say that, that does not mean we condone everything that these people do. People should have a more strategic view and not have a narrow, very small point of view. However, when someone does something correct, you say it. Other countries, they have been vocal to an extent. It's good being vocal. Of course, it's good being vocal. But what have you done in terms of the genocide? Now, as harsh as it may sound, what would have potentially stopped Israel from committing a genocide is being threatened from a country with similar repercussions if they would commit a genocide. So if someone came and told Israel, if you try and level Gaza, I will level parts of Israel. This could have probably done that, by the way. Now, the problem with some of the Arab and Muslim nations is they haven't even exhausted all of the levels before even talking about a military action. Like, if some of the countries use their financial leverage or oil leverage against the countries that are supporting Israel, this could have changed.
Yeah.
And I mean, the small movements that are doing something are intimidating Israel to an extent and causing people to have new calculations and setting new bars. However, regardless of how small this is, it's very important. It's a very important development, regardless of how these people may be perceived by mainstream media. But if someone does something right, we will say they've done something right, and we should have a strategic view. Things are shifting, and we know very well that every single human being in the Muslim world, Arab world, and the Western world, all across the world, with an ounce of morals and human empathy and compassion, supports the Palestinian people against this injustice and sees Israel for what it is. And slowly but surely, we are going to get there. However, again, I reiterate, everyone must continue with the momentum so that even if we have a slight de-escalation, people shouldn't be complacent or apathetic, so that we can finally end this injustice that's happening in Gaza and across of Palestine that's been taking way too long.
Yeah, way too long. It is so disappointing that that most Muslim countries have not got involved and have not been. I know that some of them have been vocal, but like you said, if they all got together and maybe done something, then maybe they could have stopped this. The general public have been quite good. They've done probably more to raise awareness than entire nations that have sat back quietly. It's just sort of want to finish off, brother. And I know you said keep the memento up, but for people that are really wanting to do more, is there anything that you can recommend, anything that you can think of to encourage people to do to help for this to end somehow, or to help with raising awareness?
Firstly, don't underestimate what you do. This conversation that we're having, the people viewing it, the people commenting about it, sharing it, the people posting an image of an Israeli soldier and what they're committing in Gaza, the person posting a photo of murdered, butchered innocent civilian in Gaza, the people posting facts about what's happening, all of that is activity. And all of this activity, alongside obviously some protests and the encampments and all sorts of other activism, is what's making the change. Like I said, countries, people in power, they don't change unless they feel like it's untenable for them to continue with the current climate. Like, look at Britain. How many times did the government try and intimidate people supporting Palestine? Ever since the beginning.
Yep.
Oh, we recommend you not to go and protest. Oh, your message is heard. Really? My message is not heard so long as it's not implemented. My message is heard when you stop supporting a genocidal state. That's when my message is heard. We're not looking for you to have, we know you're deaf anyway, and you're morally corrupt and depraved. We know that. However, people will continue to talk and continue to protest until actions are being taken, and some action is being taken. So continue doing what you're doing, and tawakkal ala Allah, rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people's prayers are very important. Don't underestimate how effective that is. And obviously that should be accompanied with action as well, and with raising awareness. And by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will reach there. And it would be potentially sooner than many people expect.
Yeah, inshallah, and that will be a good day. I mean, it will be good, but I don't think that the suffering that the people have faced and that we have all witnessed will ever really make this any type will ever be happy in any way. I think this will always be a very sad occasion for the Ummah. But yes, for everyone watching, please continue to make dua, of course, continue to boycott, to protest, to post, to donate to Palestine. I have a link in the description if you are looking for somewhere to donate. 100% of the proceeds go to Palestine. Thank you so much, brother, for joining me, for taking the time out. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
that you do for Palestine. I know it's your homeland, so I know that this Gaza crisis is very close to your heart. But I must say that as Muslims, as a Muslim myself, I don't know any Palestinians, but this really does feel this. I really do feel the same. It's in my heart. I think about it constantly. I see it constantly. I do dua for it every single time. I pray. Like I said, I encourage my children who are very, very young to do dua as well for them. It's such a difficult time for us. And I wish I could take all the children and all the mums, and I just wish bring them all to me. I really, really do suffer, and I have shed so many tears over this. But I thank you, brother, for everything that you're doing, and I pray, inshallah, that inshallah this will come to an end soon, and that all the people that have suffered will get their justice and will be granted the highest place in Jannah, inshallah.
Inshallah, and thank you so much for your work and your contribution, and thank you again for inviting me to your show.
No, thank you so much. May Allah bless you and your family, and thank you for everyone for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.